unfortunately recognize him because John is everywhere. Right? This picture you're seeing here, right? This is a GCSE picture, a GCSE front cover, and it's to do, well, I'm not too happy about the actual title, Migrants in Britain from 800, this is AD to the present. So John has always said to me, you know, that his picture's everywhere, and you know, they don't know him really. And he's the man that has actually been pictured so many times in the actual newspapers and different recordings. And what we're hoping to do this year is to celebrate John's contribution. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
We've had 2 disappointments not long ago when we applied for funding to do it. And this is through this so-called Windrush Day scheme. Do you know that they turned down the application twice? Can you imagine that? We're celebrating those who came on the ship. And we were told by the government that they have a different criteria. Can you imagine? So we applied the 3rd time, and this time to the lottery, and then we're going to be doing a half-an-hour educational video and documentary about John. Isn't that something? Very good. So this is just one, and there are also other books. Other books that contain Mr. Sam King as well. This one here is about Claudia Jones. This is a GCSE book, or textbook I should say, which is more appropriate, and it's from Pearson. So what's happening here with Windrush? Windrush now has become a part of society. And so I think both these 2 books actually have Sam King mentioned, but not very much in it. You know, pictures are there of him, and maybe a paragraph. But what we're hoping to do, as we say, if you'll have a look at the screen, we're hoping, I don't know when we turn these lights off here. Yeah, this one's there. I think one of them, the idea really is to, that's it. No, yeah, the back could be, yeah, that's right, that's better. The idea here is to actually celebrate the Windrush Pioneers. Now you hear a lot about the Windrush generation, don't you? Well, that's fairly new, right? Windrush generation, I should say. Thanks. But originally it was Windrush Pioneers. They're forgetting the pioneers. Really, you can't forget the pioneers. The Windrush generation is talked about in a big way, which kind of means us. Means, you know, we're living here today, we are living, you're a part of this generation. But you see, when you're commemorating heritage, you must go back to the source. You must go back to the original. And the pioneers are those who laid the foundation. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with this particular project. And we'll be doing it over the next year and the next 12 months. Now, so if you look at this, it tells you here about the project focusing on the late Samuel-Adisa King. Now, we call him the father of the Windrush generation. Were it not for Mr. King, you wouldn't hear about the Windrush generation. You wouldn't hear, I'm telling you this. He is the one who really coined the phrase. Many years ago, I've worked with him I worked with him about 33, 34 years. And I've heard nobody has talked about Windrush as he has. And that's the point. So, when you hear about Windrush generation, you are talking about Sam King. And as we go through this particular project, I'll be able to show you, and in fact later on, you'll hear something read to you, which confirms the man's originality in 1948, when he conjured up the idea, right? So the idea about Windrush is not something like in 2018 when you had the Windrush scandal. It's not about the Windrush scandal. It's about somebody who actually constructed an idea which has actually blossomed in a big way. So looking at this now, you've got Sam King there, father of the generation, and it's going to be, okay, delivered at key stage 1 to 4. Anybody else who's a teacher here? Are there teachers? Can you put a hand up? Teachers, of course, Alton, teachers there as well. Thank you very much, teacher. Now, so we're going to be dealing with this particular topic from key stage 1, which is the very younger ones, to key stage 4, to do with GCSE. And we've got the actual the tools, and we will get more tools to put that through. And then the next thing we're going to be doing, I mentioned that to you a while ago, is this documentary about the life and contribution of John Richards. Isn't that something? To be a part of it. Now, in fact, when you see videos, if a video does not have John in it, then something is not correct about the whole thing. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to publish a new book. Now, has anybody got a book called 70 Windrush Pioneers and Champions? In fact, you should have it. It's a free downloadable file on our website. Yeah. It's okay. In fact, if you go into the website, it's windrushfoundation.com. You'll find that it's free downloadable. Not only that, you can download an educational resource as well, Key Stage 2. Right? So it's all there and it's free. We don't actually make any charges, but that's how it is. So that's going to happen. So in fact, what we're going to do now for this coming year is to do 75 new people, not the same people who were on the last one, but 75 more. And by the way, you know, there were more than 1,027 people on the ship, all right? Not just 492 as you often hear. That's not the case. And we're working with some people who are going to be going through the whole list, 1,027 people. We know who they are, right? And we're going to actually be trying to publish, and if we can find their photographs. In fact, David Gayle just showed me a photograph of the lady who stowed away. We know what she looks like. We know her, right? David has done the research, and we know exactly, and this is not new, what Mona Batiste, what she looks like. And she was about, what, 21, David, was that 21 when she actually came in? Just imagine, these folk came in so young into the country. Brave. In fact, when she left Trinidad, I think she was possibly, what, was she 21 then and became 22? David, remind me of that one, David. Was she 21 when she came, or she became 21 the day before? Anyway, I want to test you there, David. But the main thing is this, is that even Mr. King was 22. And John, can you just remind us how old you were when you came?
I was about 24.
22?
Yeah, around that.
I'm testing John, you don't worry about it. Now, can you say something about your being with the same school with Sam King?
Yes, we are Prospect School.
Yeah. So, can I say a bit about Sam King and you at school?
Oh well, I'm from Prospect and he's from Islington, and we always have a difference. You know, we always play cricket. We play against Islington, and he played against Windsor Forest, and we always have a good competition.
That's how it is. We can hear from John a little bit more. But the point there I was trying to say to you is that Sam and John were the same age, right? And I don't like to talk people's, the age, but John will be 97 next year. Look at that. It's a blessing, to have John with us and to share and to talk about the history, because very important history, which is now being taught in school, but we are trying to correct the history. Do you imagine that not long ago I had to correct a textbook from the Pearson, one of those textbooks there. I had to write to them because they were saying that only 492 West Indians came. I said, no, well, you can't put that in a textbook. We know it's 1,027 plus. There were stowaways as well. And we don't know how many stowaways there were. It could be 20, 30, 40 stowaways. We don't really know. But the point is that we cannot actually print in a textbook 492 passengers came on the ship. And that was in the textbook. So they apologized. Can you imagine a textbook, one of these big top examining boards, apologizing, and so on. And the other things, in fact, they're printing pictures that look like 1948, and the pictures are sometimes 1962. And I told them that you can't do that and say it's Windrush in that sense. Anyway, and what we're going to do then after that, we're going to launch the Sam King Windrush Awards. Well, we launched one last year, 2021, and I remember Dione, you gave out prizes at Prendergast. So we're doing something to really capture the history properly. We're not just doing, a statue or a monument at Waterloo Station. That's not history. It's not history, all right? So in the following year, we will be publishing something which is more substantial. Okay, let's move on a bit. Now, what I want to do now is just to show you a few slides of. Just get that sorted in a few seconds. Right, we want to actually just keep saying that we're celebrating those who came, the Windrush Pioneers. And as you know, pioneers are the ones who laid the foundations. And in fact, what Mr. King often told me was that in 1948, in May, before he took the ship, sailed on the ship, he considered himself and his friends part of what he called like a second Mayflower. Those of you who know the story about the Mayflower, those who went to America from Plymouth, they went to a certain part of America, and well, it's history as such after that. I want to also show you, these are quick slides to show you something about Mr. King. Not only men contributed, you had women, those lovely ladies there on your left. Quickly, the ship came back. Well, not so much came back, but the ship. In fact, friends, the ship only made one journey to the West Indies, right? All of us didn't come on the Windrush. It made one journey. It started at Tilbury. It went to Southampton. It went to Trinidad, picked up Guyanese and Barbadians and those around that area. And it went to Jamaica. And then it went to, well, Cuba to pick up some water. And then to Mexico to pick up 66 Polish people. All right? And then, because they were refugees, all right? The Russians had captured, well, I wouldn't say captured, but taken them from Poland, obviously, to Siberia. Those of you who know about Siberia. And they were prisoners of war. And they were young people, right? And the Russians felt that they should release them, and then the Russians sent them anywhere, any part that could take them. Some of them went to Africa, these Polish things, and then some of them went to a part of the West Indies, and some went to Mexico. 66 went to Mexico, and then it was taken up, the ship took them back, brought them back. And then from there, I understand that they may have stopped in Cuba for water again, and then it went to Bermuda. So we often forget Bermuda, right? Bermuda is a part of the West Indies, not the Caribbean. Bermuda is in the North Atlantic, all right? And so on. So in fact, Bermuda actually has the second largest number of people who came on the ship, Bermuda, right? And that's very important to know. And then after that, you have Jamaicans first, maybe 500 or 600, Bermudans, and then I think Trinidadians, Guyanese, and that sort of order, Barbadians, and so forth. So we can be trying to publish more details. But what we want to do is to show you the history. You got to know the history from year one, and that is how it is. It should be. And then we move quickly. Mr. King becomes mayor in 1983, when I first knew him as mayor of Southwark.
And then he's a much older man there. His hair is grayer. And this is important, you know. Mr. King appeared on the Terry Wogan show. Some of you would have heard the Terry Wogan show, to promote Windrush. Right? Nobody else was doing Windrush, right, at the time. The BBC at the program he was on, Terry Wogan, who is no longer around, but the fact there is that Mr. King was so enthusiastic about Windrush. He appeared, he promoted it on Terry Wogan's show. And then on the 21st, 22nd of June, he got Lambeth Council to host the 40th anniversary of Windrush Day. So the government telling us, well, you know, they are doing the 4 years of Windrush. This is the 4th year. Don't believe them, right? Sam King is the one who actually promoted it and nurtured it. And then the host who hosted the 40th anniversary is the mayor of Lambeth, and that happened on the 22nd of June 1988. And then in 1998, you know, he asked me to, well, 1995, he asked me to work with him, and we were both directors initially, and we did the 50th anniversary. This is Prince Charles, and he met these Windrush men and women at St. James Palace. Again, you have Sam King, right, as the initiator of it. And in fact, that was, what, 24 years ago, I'm afraid, so we've all got, you know, grey hair or no hair. But the main thing there is that Sam King was there. And that's important to know. And then let me see what we have here. And then here we have, this is the last slide because time is going, just to show you, to give you a good roundup of this whole thing. We've come full circle. At the very top, you've got these boxes, five boxes, and the manager standing there on your right. The gentleman who is in the shirt, just the shirt, is John and John Hazel, and he's the man. John, if you remember John Hazel is the man who was standing among the three of you. Yeah, John. And John was telling me that they just called them together and said, you know, you two men looking, dressing, you know, you dress sharply, just pose for the camera. Because John didn't know them, right? Those three men on the deck. And then it's important to note that these children who are there, they are what is now we would call the Windrush generation. They are the younger second generation, caught up in the Windrush scandal. Right? Not the men at the top. The men now, I think possibly most of them have passed away, and they weren't involved in the scandal. All right? The pioneers weren't involved in the scandal. It's the younger ones, because these youngsters, they are coming through. They'll be pensioners now, you know. All right? They're pensioners. You're looking at pensioners coming down from one of the ships. And that's how it was. And that's sometime in the 1950s or so. And then the scandal was 2018. And, you know, I must admit that Windrush more or less helped a lot of people who didn't realize that they were a part of the Windrush. Really, they didn't realize that. Some people only found out that they were a part of this generation 2018, although they'd lived here for 50 years, and that's how it was. And big protest, which is still going on, solidarity with Windrush. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to change now to another slide. Just to show you a little bit. And this is about John, and we're so privileged to have him today in this. Yeah. John, this is about you, I'm afraid. We'll be going to. John, if you could hold that, John. Yeah, and just turn around, turn right around. Okay, turn right, swivel right around. Yeah. Now, I showed you, if you turn around to look at the sides. Yeah. And then hold the microphone very close. Mm-hmm. Now, these are two men who, other men. The gentleman in the middle is Alan Wilmot's brother. Some of you would know that. And he was Harold Wilmot. always looking sharp, always looked sharp. And the gentleman again on your left, you saw him a while ago as among the 5 boxers. That's John Hazel. Now, say a bit about that, John. You remember what was going on here?
No, I'll tell you what happened. We all signed up to come off the ship. And then the photographer came around. And then our we just started to get a shot. And that's simple as that. And that's what happened.
So you didn't really know those, smart dressing men, those two?
The first I seen them.
You didn't know them?
No.
No.
Okay.
No problem.
And I haven't seen them since.
That's important. No, John also told me that it was the 50th anniversary that he first saw this picture. Is that the case, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, John hadn't seen the picture before of these 3 men.
No.
And you know something else? Later on I'll be able to show you that it was captured in the Jamaica Gleaner, those 3 men, in 1948, but later on I'll show you in a few minutes. So that's that, John.
Yes.
Now, can you spot yourself here, John?
That's a long time ago, you know. I don't look the way I look today. I was a young man at that time.
I know. 22 years of age. That John again is spotted.
Yeah.
Okay, what about this one, John? The deep shelter? Remember that? Remember you went to the deep shelter?
Yes, that's right.
About 4 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that's right. And here again, you see, somehow the camera tends to, follow John. Always well dressed and looking smart. Now, this is an important picture. I have a feeling that the man on your very left second is Lord Kitchener, but I'm not sure. But it could well be.
Well, he was on the boat.
Yeah, he was on the boat.
Yeah.
Okay. And you heard him singing and so on?
Yes, he come down and sing a little bit, and well, you know what it is. He's Lord Kitchener, but he run after him. I didn't.
Well.
And so it happened. But on the whole, it was a good trip.
Yeah, you see, somehow he did the entertainment.
Well, now and then. Lord Beginner was on there.
Lord Beginner was there.
Yes.
Right, that is true.
Yes, so we see more of Beginner more than Kitchener.
Okay, yes, at that time. Anyway, and then what about this one, John? Again, you're posing, looking for jobs?
I don't remember that one.
it just shows you how things have moved on. What, this is something like 74 years, John.
It's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago, that's right. And John is with us today. And then, this is a favorite. No, John, say something about the British Railways.
Well, I came in 1948 and I was living at the deep shelter on the bottom there, and a chap named Leslie Price, come and talk to us with a friend of mine named Leslie Chambers. And he says, he lived around the corner there. And he says, come have a cup of tea. So we went with him and we meet his wife and his son. And then he said, we must look at job. And he said, come down to Stuart Lane. And we went down to Stuart Lane. And they took on Chambers, they sent him to Sellers, and I went to Torrington. And that's how we keep on going. That's
right. And how long did you stay with British Rail? How long?
I never leave.
So, say how important it is to keep the job that you love. An example for young people today, isn't it? Right? John joined the British Rail and remained there until retirement. Isn't that something? And did engineering work and so on, traveling from Brent right on to Orpington in Kent, and that's very important. So what we want to do is to show John as a role model for young people, whether man or woman, in that sense. That's the idea behind the project as such. And then, well, that's the end. In fact, that's the end of this bit, I'm afraid. So give John a hand. Yeah. That's important. light here there?
Thanks very much to
Okay, John.
everybody.
Very good. Now, you want to make any
I
statement?
would say thanks to everybody here. Even I don't get that hand now.
One more time for John.
Hi everyone, welcome. Okay, those who don't know me already, my name's Dione McDonald and I'm the granddaughter of Sam King as well as one of the directors of the Windrush Foundation. I mean, it was a real pleasure once, and the thing is it never grows old for me. I just love looking at photos of just family generally, but it's always whenever I see the slides or photos of my grandfather when he was a mayor, I always have that really strong memory because I was so young, and my grandfather wasn't like a lavish man. He was very simply in the way that he chose to live, because the way he saw life was more about experience and not about what you acquire. So I only knew him to have a watch and a wedding ring, no other form of jewellery. And at the same time he became mayor was when Run DMC came out. So I remember as a kid, like all of a sudden we had these rappers with big gold chains, and then my grandfather turned up in the special car because he wanted me to come with him to some events, and he had this massive chain. And I was just like, he looks like the people on TV that are and staring at him, and he was like, yes, Dion King, I know, Granddad's got a big chain, and he doesn't usually wear this. And it just stays with me because it's so not him. He's not, he's never been that way to present himself in such a lavish way. But it was, the fact that I said nothing, but he could see that I was in shock of this transformation of my granddad from a white shirt and, sort of black trousers that I'm used to seeing, and all of a sudden he had this big velvet cloak and this massive chain, and I was kind of sussing out, like, who is this man? And then we got in the car and I went to these events with him, and he was always very much about community, and it wasn't necessarily about appeasing the officials whenever we went to events. So and one of the things I went to with him was for a community centre that he had advocated for children with special educational needs. So we went there, and they all had like the officials lined up, and my granddad went straight to the little boy that had special needs and said, yes, young man. And was like talking to him. But it stays with me because even at 90, when we used to go to the grocers, we'd go in there and they'll be like, yes, Mr. King, my mayor, always my mayor. And that to me spoke that for my grandfather it was about relationship with the people that you're there to support, and it wasn't about all the superficiality of the role and all the sort of special events you have to appear at as a mayor, but that those connections with community lasted all the way up until he was in his 90s, that he'd get like the free loaf of bread in the local grocers or something like that. That always sort of stuck with me, that actually for it to last that long, for that year of service that you did, and to make those significant connections with people that to this day that they always will say, you're my real mayor forever kind of thing. That's relational, that's building real significant bonds with people. But I will not witter on anymore. I have today my two boys, Samuel-Adisa here and Elijah McDonald, and what they'd like to share with you is just to do a reading from Sam's book. So they'll read from page 91 that speaks about part of his experience on the Windrush. Now Elijah will first begin with quite a bold piece that he'll play on the double bass. It's called Dinosaur Dance, but they felt it would at least speak to the bravery and the boldness of those who made that journey. And then Samuel will read, and then Elijah will finish with a piece called Spanish Dance. It's a little bit more slower, reflective and very contemplative. I hope it makes sense once you hear the melody.
The men from the RAF, returning from leave, boarded in Jamaica, but the attention was on the 492 independent-minded Panthers who, from all over the island and with an average age of 24 and in accord with the same aim and steely determination, were leaving the rock to see an honest living in the motherland. We dubbed ourselves the Pioneers on the second Mayflower. Mention must also be made of the additional unlicensed, unauthorized barracudas who surfaced later in the voyage. The sea was no stranger to more than 3/4 of us. Some had already travelled to Panama, United States and England, and were familiar with foul and fair conditions, the food, the berths and the seasickness. The first leg of the journey took us to Mexico, where stopping was just for a few hours, and so we were not allowed off the ship. One of our number, however, spotted a handcart man with some watermelons by the quayside. He sneaked off, returning with an armful of melons, a treat for us, we thought. So we all gathered round him. The man set about cutting them in pieces and sending them to us. He was thereafter known as Columbus, a name to which he answers to this day in Brixton Market. The next brief stop was Havana, Cuba, where another batch of Europeans disembarked in calm waters to the small and beautiful island of Bermuda. In Havana, it was alleged that there was a mechanical trouble in which we would take some few days to rectify. Therefore, we were permitted to leave the ship and go ashore. Of course, this was a thrill.
Grandchildren of Sam King.
Okay, Samuel, who read, is 14, and Elijah, who played, is 12. And I'm a very proud mummy because they are rich.
Thank you. Okay, now it's interesting that Samuel read that passage, because his granddad talks about they actually saw themselves as pioneers, right? And it wasn't only himself, this is Sam, but his friends. He knew his friends were going, they served in the RAF as well. And you know, I mean, Sam was a religious person, he knew about the Mayflower. The Mayflower took, I think it was 110 or whatever, people, including children, and they called them the Pilgrim Fathers. You ever heard that word before? Fathers, and they went on this Mayflower. Now the Mayflower, the ship, was one of many ships called Mayflower. It was the only ship called Mayflower. There were quite a few. But it was one gentleman who actually took that journey, and it was a hazardous journey. They almost didn't arrive. But they arrived, and today America has about what, 200, 300 million people. And and you also have this thing called Thanksgiving. You heard about Thanksgiving? It was the Mayflower people who first started Thanksgiving. They were the ones who started it in November. I know what's interesting as well is that the Mayflower, let's call them the passengers then, they were helped by the local people, indigenous, to farm. They know anything about farming, to survive. And you know what is very sad, that in 50 or 55 years after, not many indigenous people were in that area. It's sad to know that the Pilgrim Fathers actually drove them out. That's very sad. And it's a comparison with when the West Indians came to this country as a few people. We didn't drive out the British. You see what I mean? We couldn't be, because we were only very small in numbers. The difference in mentality, the difference in how history was. You see, that more and more people came, and then it more or less, to use Thatcher's term, swamped the actual indigenous people. And eventually there were hardly anybody now in that area. But the main thing is, it's about traveling elsewhere, isn't it? And developing a community. And today, Massachusetts is a massive state, isn't it? Really. And then the people who really were supposed, well, who lived there and maybe for thousands of years, they're not there. But if you compare ourselves, as West Indians, we are still a minority, in this country, traveling a different way. So Mr. King saw it differently. But they dubbed themselves, he said, pioneers, as it was the Mayflower. And then, of course, he mentioned the stowaways. And up to now, I know that David Gayle has actually done a study of the stowaways. And we don't know how many stowed away. We will never know. Some people, there's one gentleman who mentioned to us, he lives somewhere in the north, about how he helped his friends, and I suppose it wasn't illegal then to help a stowaway. But these men were ex-servicemen. That's the point about it. They couldn't live, they said they couldn't live back home. Because back home, eventually I'll try to find, there's a slide here actually, Ebony, and I'm going to try to find it for you, because it's very important to know that things were hard in 1948, right? And I want to show you something that was said by the government to do with these, not with the stowaways so much, but the people who actually came. So let me try and find it here for you, which is very, very important. It's called Looking for Work. It's a slide which was sent to me by Bill. Let's see now. Let me. All right. Here we are. Look at this. No, I'm afraid. Okay, I'm afraid I should have really. John, I'm afraid it's you again. You're in the picture. Well, this picture was actually. Is a picture of a newspaper, Friends, the Daily Gleaner, 1948, all right? And the date is the 29th of June, and what they were saying is the high cost of living shocks West Indian job seekers. Those were the Windrush people, right? And there were issues to do with that. It was high, but John, I understand that you were cold. Were you cold in the deep shelter, John? It was summer, but there's another clipping that I have that showed that the men were actually seeking overcoats. Overcoats, because it was cold. After all, I mean, those of you who have basements in your houses, it's usually cooler, isn't it? Similar to the deep shelter. The deep shelter is one layer below the northern line. If you're traveling on the northern line, think about what's below you. And John, you spent about 2 weeks, John? Or 1 week? 2 weeks, right? In the deep shelter. So in a sense, what you're seeing there is that those who came, and there are many men in the deep shelter really, it was tough. The women, in fact, I think the stowaway lady who eventually, did she sail first class, Bill? I mean, David, eventually with her 48 pounds.
She immigrated to America with her husband a few years later, and they travelled first class.
Yeah, they collected the stowaway. They found the stowaway because she couldn't sleep, on the deck as such. So they found her. She was caught, and then the men, the Kysonians. I think I must admit, speaking to Crusoe, The Kaisonian, they did a concert or two, and they raised more than £48, which was the higher charge to be on the top deck. Not what top deck, first class. And so she actually sailed first class. Isn't that something? You came as a stowaway and then you traveled first class. And eventually she went to a hostel, didn't she, David? She went to a hostel, I think somewhere in, was it Earth's Court? There were a few hostels. But she also complained, you know, about the actual charge being made by the hostel to be there. Yes. In fact, I think was it 6 shillings to be in the deep shelter, John? A day?
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. So another clipping which I don't really have right away was that there were issues about surviving, you know, in 1948. So it wasn't easy. That's the point we want to make. So what we want to do with this project is to show you, you know, the early days of survival and how men like John, women like well, Lucilla Harris eventually went to live in Brixton, one of the pioneers, Lucilla Harris. She was one of the older ladies who were on the ship. And they all, you know, all claimed about high cost of living as such. Now, at that time, there was a national strike, well, emergency, and it was decreed as such. And what I also heard, and this is from Bill Hearn, is that some of the men, John, I don't remember this, because there was a strike on the docks. Some of the Windrush men had to help themselves and clear things on the docks because there was a strike when they landed. And it's quite strange also that the ship did land because there were discussions in Parliament to turn the ship back. Did they ever hear that? Yes, that ship never, you know. But of course they couldn't. You had men on the ship who were coming back for jobs. And there were a lot of people from Bermuda who served in the docks and the actual ports there, who actually was coming back to England and then going back to Bermuda. So only big talk about turning the ship back, or turning the ships, by the way, to East Africa, so that the Windrush men would go and actually harvest peanuts. Have you ever heard of such nonsense? No. And we have those records. We have those records about the ship, thinking that the men, 1,027, were coming in as a wave, you know, to eventually, you know, take over. And in fact, one of the headlines, and I have this newspaper cutting somewhere, it says, invasion. That's right, invasion, right, for this particular ship by Windrush. So that's the kind of story we know has happened, because we've got the clippings, we've got the records, we've got the research done, etc., etc., etc. So again, the idea behind our project is to feature the history, so that young people can understand. You've got Samuel, you've got Elijah, some other young people. We want them to understand. And this one of the books. This is a book about Claudia Jones. Again, the Windrush is in this book. This is a Key Stage 4 book. It's to do with GCSE and so on. And again, Mr. King worked with this lady, Claudia Jones, and he told me that were it not for this lady, there hardly have been at that time any black politicians. She was among them. He told me that she was like the teacher. Right? Anybody remembers the name Lord Pitt? Yes. Pitt, that's right. He said that people like Lord Pitt were like, you know, learners and students of Claudia Jones in terms of activism. You couldn't stop her from being an activist. And Mr. King worked with her to launch the first carnival. It wasn't called Notting Hill at the time, all right? It was called just the West Indian Carnival, not Caribbean. And by the way, you know something? We shouldn't get mixed up with West Indians and Caribbeans, because in the early days, nobody talked about the Caribbean apart from saying the West Indies, because, as you know, Columbus went, you know, a different place. He was going to the east, and eventually he ended up going west. And calling the West Indies because of all these different islands and and colonies or places. And that was the name. And then when Britain occupied the Caribbean and the North Atlantic, Bermuda is in the North Atlantic, the highest island right up. Not only one island, you know. Bermuda is a number of islands, hundreds of islands. And Britain settled there in 1609 and took over the island completely by 1612, 1613. And African, your ancestors would have actually been taken there in 1616. It's a long time ago, all right, 1616. So you're looking at 400 years of the presence of African people in the West Indies. And then Britain occupied St. Kitts, and developed St. Kitts, and then Nevis, and then I think it's Barbados, 1625, and all the other islands, Antigua, Trinidad was later on, and Guyana later on, and so on. So you're looking at the history that we're going to try and tell, you know, when we do this project, or finish the project within, let's say, a year and 3 or 4 months. So what we're going to do now, we're coming almost to the end. We're going to then call Nairobi at this point, who is a poet in residence, so to speak, because she composes different poems for us. So let's give her a hand as we come.
Thank you. Ooh. Can you hear me? Yes. How are you all doing? Yes, let's get some energy in the room. Just raise your hands. Raise your hands. Hello? And then back up. Okay, drop the hands. Okay. Alright, so I've got 2 pieces for you this evening. And a disclaimer, I know I've got some young ones in the room, that the N-word is used in its historical context for the first poem. But we know what to do when we hear something that we like. Click those fingers. Can we hear the fingers clicking? Just want to make sure, yeah, click fingers. And you know, when you hear something you like, you need to be saying something like, Let's try that. Okay, we're ready, we're ready. All right, so the first piece is entitled The Official Windrush. Oh, you like that already? Ox. Hello, Nignog, they would say, conflating nigger and wog together, using it like a term of endearment, the warm inflection at the end masking the pejorative. We being too reserved or respectful, behaving as if we had no clue, or too angry, resisting the urge to feud. We would respond with a cordial, good morning, and smile to avoid contention. As ever, they don't want us to talk about that aspect of Windrush. They only want us to fight over the scraps in the government Windrush Fund, then party on June the 22nd, eating West Indian food and dancing like they never hurt us. Like they're still not hurting us. Protecting a nostalgic innocence, promoting a false ignorance. The preference is to become enraged at our seeking a balanced truth. But if they remembered the suffering they caused, if they acknowledged the lives they paused, and considered what we achieved in this long time, hostile, dangerous delusions environment, maybe there'd be less of a rush to deport us under cover of darkness. One can only hope. Maybe if there was transparency instead of censorship, some truth and reconciliation instead of discrediting those who share the whole story. In the hope that history won't repeat itself, we would indeed move on. We're still talking about it because you behave as if it's the first time you've tried to repatriate us. It isn't. Like the data is newly showing a lack of representation in senior jobs. It isn't. Like our overrepresentation in prison is a new, uncontrived phenomenon. It isn't. Like disproportionate outcomes in the justice system is uncommon. It isn't. Marginalizing us, criminalizing us, reducing us to ash has been going on for centuries. And we will not forget. Because forgetting leads to people perpetrating wrong under the guise of not knowing it's been done before. For when there is no record, no living memory, we are all subjected to ill-conceived ideas as remedy and told to give them a go, as if this was the first time they'd been tried. It's like drinking poison anew and forgetting that we nearly died. In the meantime, it's important for us to raise our voices, to tell our stories in our own words, remembering our heroes, how they pushed against the grain, investing in new heroes, making sure everyone knows their names, reimagining a system not built on harm and exclusion, to get up, stand up for your rights. It's not about I, and it's all about we. Together we will make it to the light. So, to avoid any confusion, we dispense with all illusions. Just in case you think what's already done is enough, take it from this Windrush descendant, it isn't. Thank you. And I did want to just commend Sam and Elijah. I really enjoyed your rendition. I think, Sam, definitely you have the theatrical about you in terms of your delivery. So don't let anybody tell you you can't do that.
Right,
you definitely have presence when you are up here. Know to speak that into you.
Amen.
And Elijah, your playing is beautiful. And I see you playing in front of hundreds and thousands of people appreciating your skill and your gift. And I bless the both of you. This last poem was inspired by my mother, who she always used to talk about, she arrived in the 60s, in 61, and she always used to talk about, obviously, the treatment that she experienced was not what she was expecting, but she always referenced how the English or the British treated their pets better than they treated black people. And some of the things that she has said sort of like just formed this poem, and it's about, you know, inequalities, and it is entitled Puss and Dog. Under a leafy banana tree, Puss and Dog lie down a dream and fantasize about a better life in England green. All on account that Brother Rat did stow away and come back to tell tall tales about life across the waves. Brother Rat say, things is different there. For puss and dog live like king and queen. I saw things you wouldn't believe. Nobody flings stone after puss and dog in England. Over here, people no respect you. Remember puss? When you nearly dead sick of the fish bone them fling give you? Puss said, me remember that. Now we have to take time eat. Well, said Brother Rat, over there, them no business with scraps. Them buy food give you. All kind of gourmet delights in your own bowl with a picture on it. Over here, you have to jump in a river to get clean. Over there, them bathe you and brush your teeth. And buy special treat to keep teeth clean. Over here, if you get too close to the master, them throw all pot and shoes after you. Over there, even if you don't have no pedigree, them let you sit on the table and eat off them plates. As Brother Rat talk, more puss and dog gather to hear this incredible tale. Over there, some puss and dog get to wear fancy clothes and go to shows. Some of them got jobs and work for the police and get to sniff up all kind of drugs and weed. And sometimes when the owner gone on holiday, puss and dog get to stay in their own hotel with a pool and their own bedroom. Stop tell lie, Brother Rat, said Puss. The truth may I tell you, said Brother Rat. Over here, when you go out a rogue, nobody miss you. Over there, every minute they call, here kitty kitty. Over here, worm will numb you and lice will bald you, but over there, they will sell them house to pay a pet bill and he will leave you in them will. So, said Dog, if things so sweet over there, why you bother come back? Well, said Brother Rat, things is sweet for puss and dog, but over there them love for poison we, and they trap for rat. Me lose enough of my brethren sick and the hatred them have for we. As soon as I hear that rat and puss have equal status, me gone straight back to England. See?
We'll obviously featuring her more often. In fact, we have something like another 12 events to do over the next year, and you can be hearing from her again and again. Now, we committed to doing it. We can't say, well, we can't do it. You know, we got funding to do it from the lottery, and therefore we must show it. So we have recordings, and the recording is going to be on YouTube. So as the time goes by, obviously, we will be very modest in the way we comment and so on, because at least we're going to be traced, right, by the government and by the lottery. Because, by the way, you know that the government is trying to rival us. You won't believe it, in the sense that we're doing things that But we've done things that they have been trying to do. And they've stolen the march on us with this particular Windrush so-called monument. And I can say this very openly. I'm not going to be afraid to say it. Because the Windrush men didn't actually pass through Waterloo. If they ever went through a station, it would have been Fenchurch Street. Yeah. Right? They never went there. But again, politics is politics. Right? That particular monument is a conservative Tory monument. Although they had Prince William and Kate, again that was a show, and it was actually formulated, and I have no problem in saying this or fair. It was meant to pacify West Indian people. The whole thing about this Windrush Day, although I went for it. I mean, I was there the day when we discussed it with one of their ministers of government. But then they twisted it now to actually serve the purpose of a government propaganda. That's fact. I've got no fear to say that. So therefore, this project has come in very handy for us to speak the truth. To speak what is actually the real story of Windrush. And that's important for us. And the history of our children. You've got Samuel, you've got Elijah. They must know what their granddad did. No, I always say this, no Windrush, no Sam King. No Sam King, no Windrush. Because it wasn't a particular experience of this particular ship going to the West Indies. Would it have been the Almanzora Day? Would it be the Ormond Day? Or the Orbiter Day? These are ships that came. The Ormond came in spring of 1947. The Almanzora with Alan Wilmot came and went in 1947 December. And by the way, Alan Wilmot took the same ship that your granddad came on going back to Kingston and Portland. Alan Wilmot was on that ship going back to England. Isn't that something? They didn't say hello, but the main thing there was that that same ship is historic, the Almanzora. And then 6 months later, Mr. King took the ship in May to England. So it's a lot of ship, you know. And you know what he's always said, that there was a lady, I think it's Mother Thatcher, I don't know when you read the book again, folks who have the book, that he said that he spoke to this lady who was the like the community midwife. In those days, you know, there was no certificate, you know, to do these things, but they were experts of delivering babies, and you know, I read a book called To Shoot Hard Labor, and this again from Smith, you know, Uncle Sammy, Antigua, and you know, he said the women kept the village healthy, African women, because there was no government doctor in the village. Is that something? And the African women kept it there, as far as possible anyway, healthy in the villages. And that is how, you know, we survived, right? It wasn't a health service, no NHS in those days. It was African women with a herbal medicine. And, okay, you hear about Mary C. Cole. There were lots of midwives, I mean, people like her. She was in, what, the 19th century? There was a lady by the name of Cuba Cornwallis, right? An African woman of mixed heritage. And she actually nursed Napoleon, not Napoleon, what am I saying? Horatio Nelson to life. Horatio Nelson got sick in Honduras, right? Because they were trying to capture Honduras, all of it. And the Hondurans, the indigenous people, just drove them out. And eventually, Horatio was actually injured, fatally injured. And they took him by ship to Jamaica. I think it's Spanish Town Hall, that area where the base was. And Cuba Cornwallis was the one who was specially geared to bring him back to life. You don't hear about Cuba Cornwallis. Many of you might not have heard it. Search to Google. Cuba Cornwallis, C-U-B-A-H, Cornwallis, because she was the
I would say slave or free slave, of Lord Cornwallis. Those are history. It's in the books. It's in the books. It's in the internet, right? It's a fact. I mean, I've got books on it, but we don't have any picture of this lady. She was before Mary Seacount's mother, all right? That's the kind of history that we know. So we're looking back at the kind of history that we want to actually deliver and allow people to understand. So I'll come back to the point about Windrush. We were kind of fortunate to be able to challenge some of the things that are in the book, this book, with the project. We have a lot of people. We've got David, we've got Roxanne, there's Beverly, there's Jennifer, and you got Ebony again. I should be forgetting it here. We got Marlon. I mean, we are working on these things. We got Dione, we got Alton, we got Samuel, we got Elijah. We're going to try to do as much as we can to bring about, I would say, like a revolution in terms of the truth and reality of what took place in 1948, right? Not only that, you know, you saw Mr. King in RAF gear. No RAF, no Windrush. These are facts, right? Were it not for the war, you and I might not be here. That's the point. And it's a shame to say that, or not, I'm not ashamed, no, I'm not saying that's a shame. Because after the 1914-18 war, a lot of people tried to stay, servicemen and women, but many men tried to stay, and they were not allowed to stay, although they had British passports. 1914-18 war, and afterwards. In 1919, there was a riot. There were lots of race riots to do with that. Those of you know the story. I'm making this point. There was no kind of Windrush in the 1920s, after all that. But after the Second World War, you have men and women who felt, wait a minute, you know, there's poverty in the West Indies and I can't live there anymore. I can't. The West Indies suffered problems and food shortages. In Antigua, I read Antigua, there were problems there. People actually didn't survive. You know, there was hunger and rationing to many a lot of extent. So I'm saying that the war affected the West Indies in a big way. Not only that, the ship was sunk by the Germans. Can you imagine that the Germans' U-boats were sinking ships in the West Indies, in the Caribbean Sea, in the North Atlantic, right? And many of our ancestors didn't survive, right? I mean, Alan was telling me that he remembers as a boy, well, that was in the First World War, that the troops were not equipped. Could you imagine coming to England in the winter without an overcoat? And that's what they did. They sent these troops, these African West Indian troops, to fight in the First World War, and they had no coats. They had no coats, and many of them actually had frostbite and had to be amputated, and they never saw war. From Newfoundland and some of those places, they went back to Jamaica and elsewhere. And Alan Wilmer told me that as a boy, he remembers going to some of the actual centers and seeing the men, with actually no feet, and so on. So you're looking at the contribution that West Indians have made, by the way, not only from the last and the war before, but from 1616 in Bermuda. Now, I went to Bermuda about 4 years ago, and I saw a massive fort that the British built, right, to protect, the interests of Britain. And Bermuda was an essential place. So we don't want to forget about Bermuda. So now we're going to make a close now, and we're going to have our last item. Can we get Tobago Crusoe, who is going to send us off for the evening? And thank you very much for coming, and we're going to close at least before 9 o'clock.
Good evening, everybody. I thought I knew something about Windrush, but this evening I really know about Windrush, and I'm very happy to participate in this event. Now, I'm a Kaisonian, and for you who don't know, you might hear people talking about Calypso, but it's not really Calypso, it's Kaiso. Back in Africa, Kaiso was songs of praise, but then after the enslavement of the Africans, they came to the Caribbean and it became resistance songs, songs of resistance, protest songs. And it wasn't easy in the plantation, and there were many revolts. As a matter of fact, I'm from Tobago, and I know of 4 real big revolts that took place in Tobago, and some parts of the island are named after the fellas who really perpetrated this thing. Sandy Point, Sandy and all these boys, they really did it for Tobago. But in the plantations, it wasn't easy. Fix yourself and let's go into the heart of one of the enslaved Africans. I'm a slave from a land so far. I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. I'm a slave from a land so far. I was caught and I was brought here from Africa. Well, it was licks like fire from the white slave master every day. I down on my knees. It took us weeks and weeks to cross the seas, to reach in the West Indies. Then they make me walk. Oh yes, I walk. Oh Lord, each day I toil, I toil, I toil, and I toil. Oh Lord, no pay. I'm dying. I'm dying. Oh Lord, I wanna be free. Many times I try to run, but the English slave master standing there with a gun, and I know he's shooting to kill. So I stayed, I prayed, but I'm planning still. I studied night and day how to get away. I had to make a brilliant escape, but every time I study them whips and them dogs, my belly does start to shake, cause it made me walk. Oh yes, I walk. Oh Lord, each day, yes, I toil, I toil, I toil, and I toil. Oh Lord, no pain. I'm dying. I'm dying. Oh Lord, I one day. Though he knew my request was small, was the sting of the whip to answer me when I call. We had to stand and sing to express our feelings to this cruel and wicked man. That was the only medicine to make him listen. And his own eyes was sung when they make me walk. Oh yes, I walk. Oh Lord, each day I'm dying. Oh, I'm dying. Oh Lord, I wanna be free. Times have changed in so many ways. One day somebody said, free those wretched slaves. I was then put out on the street. Got no home, got no clothes, and nothing to eat. I forgot my native culture. I was just like a volunteer from the white boy. I have to steal. I had no particular ambition, no education. From the white boss I had to steal, cause he made me walk. Oh yes, I walk. Oh Lord, each day I'm dying. Written by the great Francisco Singer, Mighty Sparrow, one of our top guys for years. I always like to sing that because next 2 days we'll be celebrating Emancipation Day in Tobago. We started a week ago and we have what we call the Heritage Festival leading up to the Emancipation Day. Now, we ought to be proud as black people. We ought to be proud because there are a lot of things that black people done for humanity that we don't know. They're not being taught at school. All we know about the white inventors and all these sort of things because you keep suppressing the achievement of black people. But then this one was done by Hollis Liverpool. Mamba was 10 years old. In history class was told of the great African civilization. Leaning before his bed, in numbers prayers he said, well, I thank you, dear Lord, for the knowledge my teacher has shared. I thank you, dear Lord, for the African race. The first man on earth you hear place. I heard that Africans taught the Greeks and the Romans and civilized all Europeans. I heard from my teacher that Ethiopia was the cradle of all man's culture, where iron's melting had its origin. I thank you for showing me these facts, dear Lord, and I thank you for creating me black. As Mamba said his prayers, down his cheek rolled the tears, cause Mamba remembered how much black people suffered. his heart he was glad, though the tears made him sad, cause his mind went back on all great things that black people had. He said, I thank you, dear Lord, for Egypt and Nubia, and for Kush, Mali, and Ghana. Their art form, their sculptures, their great architecture. My eyes haven't behold such wonder. I heard of Black Moses and Akhenaton and Imhotep the physician. Oh, what great heroes, what these great pharaohs. I thank you for showing me these facts, dear Lord, and I thank you for creating me black. Then Mamba bowed his head in memory of the dead, asking for God blessings on great African kings. He asked God to inspire the modern day world leaders so that they in turn could be as great as Mansa Musa. I thank you, dear Lord, for great African kings like the Dahomey Shah, Niezi, Shaka, the great Zulu, Askia from Timbuktu, and the Ashanti, Osei, Tutu, Alfonso from the Congo, and the great Chetwayo, Moses, statesman from Bosoto, and from Nigeria, that Igbo Jaja. I thank you for showing me these facts, dear Lord, and I thank you for creating me.
Again and again. Okay, right. I'm just reminded that there's a show, an event on the 13th of August at CSEP, Croydon Supplementary Education Project, CSEP. They're commemorating 40 years of their existence as a supplementary school in Croydon, and also commemorating 60 years, I think, of independence of Jamaica, including Nairobi Thompson, who will be performing there at that event. And we welcome you. I tell you, well, look, the main thing about the event, it's a commemoration, whereby we're contributing something to it. To the CSEP, and also they're raising funds as well. 40 years, because after all, to be in existence 40 years is quite something. And come here. Remind me about something that come on now.
I'll be doing a full set, so I'll be doing 1.5 hours of Windrush poetry, so if you want to hear more...
A one-woman show. That is special.
So do come along if you can. Thank you.
The 13th of August at the CSEP, it's in Croydon, 32 Sydenham Road. 32 Sydenham Road. I think it's CR1. But look at the website. I didn't bring any leaflets. They didn't send me any leaflets, but I'm just promoting it. And promoting the one-woman show by Nairobi Thompson. That's going to be very special. You'll be electrified for 90 minutes. How about that? We've had a 90-minute show today, and just imagine Nairobi doing it. Laughter and joy and celebration. Isn't that something? By Nairobi. Now we're going to close now. Before we close, can I mention Lavina Brown? I forgot to mention one more thing we were supposed to do, and I'm sure that she would tell me off. We will have something like up to 15 Ben television programs, Ben television Windrush programs, not commercials, you know. It's going to be for 20 minutes of interviews and different things, where we will be talking about Windrush, about Mr. King, about the family, about what he's done, and so on. And that's going to be, as I said, on Ben television, and we're going to be sending you details as we go along. But that's also something special, which I didn't write on the screen. But the main thing is that lots of things to do, and that's very important. So let me just thank everybody, unless anybody has a pressing question to ask John or me, and then we're going to close. I'm sure that you had a long evening, and you know, I'm sure you have something maybe to ask, or ask me after.
I have not only a question, but an observation. I have not only a question, but an observation.
Okay.
When are we going to do something about you?
About me? I'm preparing.
Mr. Alpha, I have been following you for years. And you know that. You know that.
Yes. Yes.
When are we going to do something about you? Whenever I can, I'm hearing about others. I'm going to the third generation.
I know that.
And I haven't heard anything coming up about you. I think it's about time now.
Yes.
We all get together and get something special for Mr. Alfred.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, we're going to surprise you then. You'll be surprised this year, before the year is done. Okay. Thank you for telling me. I'm hoping to write something. The gospel according to Windrush. But never mind. The main thing though is that, you know, for the next 12 months, you know, we're going to have a good time. We're going to be enriched, and you know, the word I should say is edutainment, not entertainment. Edutainment, in the sense that, and I have to tell you this, I'm going to tell the government for doing this. They have changed Windrush into a fanfare by giving funding to groups that, with due respect to the guys, you know, who play dominoes here, Windrush Dominoes, Windrush Sports Day. Now, I showed you what was happening to the men. I don't think it's going to play. Maybe not, but look, I don't know. The men and women who came had difficulties, you know, in settling because of difficulties in accommodation, jobs. Some of them came as engineers, and you know, they got jobs as street cleaners, and so on. Right? Now, there's no reason to have a fanfare about that. I don't know whether you want to. No, you see? And so there's a diversion into having what we call fun and frolic. And I told them that. I mean, I argue with them and say, you know, don't give £500,000 a year to groups who are going to actually just have a nice dance up and fun and playing. No. There ought to be edutainment, really, to help young people to understand that to have them, you know, dancing and, you know, winding up, as they say sometimes, you know. But we don't want that. Windrush isn't about that. It's a serious business. And by the way, as well, due respect to the Jewish people, this Holocaust Memorial Day, and I'm sure as teachers you have something to do with Holocaust. It's a sacred thing. It's not jump up on Carnival, you know, on Holocaust Memorial Day. And that's the point about Windrush. It's a serious business. I remember telling one of the ministers of government that, look, why not convert Windrush Day into something more like the Holocaust, where, to start with, it's controlled by, well, Holocaust controlled by Jewish people, and Windrush controlled by West Indians. Yes. So at the moment, The whole Windrush thing is controlled by not our people. It's not. We don't control £500,000. It's passed out by the government for propaganda. And let them come and talk to me about it. But anyway, let's say thank you to everybody who took part. We have the McDonald family, we've got Nairobi Thompson, Ebony, and Gayle, and especially can we give a good hand to Verona Furtado about the food? The main thing, who knows what it is, we can do that. But the main thing is this is the first of our events. And we want you to come back again the next time we do it. In fact, we could well be doing not only live events, but some on the online, Zoom. Because one chap from Trinidad said, why are you doing it only live? You know, why not Zoom? You know, we can't do everything at one go. You know, but so we're going to try and repeat this particular event we have tonight on Zoom, but we have to work on it. It's not easy to do it. But the main thing is helping people to understand the journey. You know, Mr. King used to tell me that this lady, Mother Thatcher, he remembers, well, many times shaking the hand of this Mother Thatcher, who was about 5 years of age on Emancipation Day. Can you imagine? 1838. Have a look at the book. And he often told me this story about Mother Thatcher, who was a midwife. Again, community midwife. And you know, she would tell him about Emancipation Day as when she was 5 years old. That's something, you know. And Mr. King would talk to me about that journey of the ancestors across the Atlantic, enslaved. Whereas the journey from Kingston and the West Indies to here was a journey of freedom and a hope. And that's what I want to close. Well, thank you very much for coming, and give yourself yes.
Just before we close, I mean, as the mother was saying, can we just say thank you to Arthur today as well? Just clap your hands for Arthur. It's such a wealth of knowledge, and I got so much today from everything that was shared. And I think that, you know, the championing of the stories, every single one of us, is our history, and it needs to be told, and somebody needs to be championing it, and Arthur was always there together with Sam King. Sam King lived with us for the last 8 years of his life, and Arthur was always right there with Grandad King, and their story is entwined together, you know. So, you know, just the championing of the history and the knowledge that needs to be shared. Let's just all get behind it, and let's just keep it going. Thank you, Arthur, again. Thank you very much.
But okay, first, but keep looking at Eventbrite, and we want to say to you that we're going to have just as interesting a program as today in terms of edutainment and more information about the Windrush people and the journey from the 1940s right on, including the war. All right, thank you very much. And John, can you give John a standing ovation? John, watch out.
Thanks very much for this salvation, and I hope the next time we'll meet again, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Can we hear more gospel?
Yes, we'll hear some of the second time.